Here's something embarrassing. The the Americans, their leaders turned everyone against me. My father was involved in that, by the way, and my mother's older son from a different father, he was involved in that. He's very jealous of me. So they brought me to New York, and gradually they convinced me that everyone was cooperating against me. So then I got paranoid, and I said, I wasn't getting any work lately for a while. So then I eventually moved to a warmer climate, and I still haven't begun to get the social inclusion necessary to be prosperous. But that was that was 15 years ago or more in New York City. And so then I was paranoid. Everyone's against me. I have to eat. Well, maybe I should eat in a more high class environment instead of stealing from the grocery store. I should have just left New York. It's a bad climate, and I should have just said I need to get it onto some social welfare. But I didn't think it was an option because I figured, I'm a white man who's like white men, productive and having good skills and knowledge. I should never be dependent on welfare. I'm a white man who should never be dependent on welfare. And so some white men are like that. They're like, I'm not ever supposed to be a dependent on welfare. So I thought, okay, everyone was coordinating socially. So I thought, I'll just, I had this idea to eat at a restaurant and then run away. It was a terrible idea. But I was depleted. My neurotransmitters were depleted. It was dementia is what it was. Drug-related dementia. You use stimulants and they cause an early onset of a temporary state of dementia. So I went to restaurants and I even went to a Red Lobster and then I ran away after eating. And I'm really, I'm not proud of dementia. That's like dementia. It's like as if I was shitting my pants in on the subway among a bunch of people. Dementia is a disgusting thing to see, but it was drug-related dementia. So it's as if I was shitting diarrhea in public on the train. It could be going over a bridge or whatever, in public with a bunch of commuters, people around me having to endure my dementia symptoms. So that was terrible. And it was related to actually using some stimulants and a lack of sleep. And it additionally, I was using drugs. I should not have been using drugs. I should have said, I'm throwing in the towel. I got to get out of this city. I think the British had too much influence in New York City at that time. New England, those states are very often loyal to the British in their attitude. They're aligning with Canada and with London. Believe it or not, the British have had a lot of influence on New York City and states further north than New York. So anyway, I shouldn't have been there. I guess it was more or less regrettable that I was there. For me, it was because I still haven't recovered. But I have yet to talk about it so that people can put aside their fears. So then I was vilified. I had gone and I ate a good breakfast, and this was a place under a bridge where there's a tunnel through a building, and there's a bridge over a street, and on top of the bridge there's a road, I guess, a street going through a building, and under that there's a little place where they serve breakfast, and I ate breakfast and drank a beer, and then I went out. So then the young man, he followed me out, and I didn't say anything, but I was like, well, this is what I was thinking. I wasn't going to fight him. I was just like, are you going to restrain me? I thought, it's pointless. to bother with that because the food's already in my belly. That was my attitude. The food's already in my belly, so it's too late. Sorry about that. That was my dementia. It's as if I was shitting myself with diarrhea in his restaurant. He was a good young man, served my breakfast and a beer, and then I went outside and I started to leave. But my point was not, I was not going to fight him. My point was the food's already in my belly. I won. Sorry, I didn't win. It was dementia. I'm not happy about that. I'm just disgusted that I was suffering dementia and interrupting his job in stealing service is a serious problem. It is a bad problem. But okay, I should have stayed. I should have stayed and waited for the police because I needed to go into a mental facility to get my head together, get my mind together well enough to recognize I need to get out of this place. So I think it was because of a cultural clash between myself and New York City. I think they had a fake terrorist attack on September 11th, 2001. I'm fairly confident of that. But they will say that it was it was a necessary cultural operation to make Americans agree to do some things, to draw Americans out into the world, to deplete American strength and deplete American resources by policing the world for the hypothetical terrorism. That it wasn't terrorism, it was a fake terrorism, and the Muslims and the Arabs were not responsible for having done that, and there were not. I'm convinced there were not 3,000 people killed, and it was more or less a demolition project, more or less, to get rid of some unwanted buildings in a way which would contribute to national identity. It was a cultural operation. I'm convinced of that, and they'll say, you know, we have to lead the world, and we needed to do that cultural operation, and you're just obstructing American leadership, and you're just getting in the way as usual, and you're undermining our valuable leadership, our important cultural operation that was done in cooperation with the British. And of course, the British are enlisting or recruiting the Americans to defend the pathway between London and Australia and New Zealand, which is crucial for the British to have access to Australia and New Zealand. And so the British are recruiting the Americans to shape the region around where there are crucial waterways going through the Middle East, through the Suez Canal. And all that's very important and strategic. And the British are recruiting and controlling the Americans with fake terrorism for that purpose. It doesn't matter if you know what I'm saying is true or if you believe me. It doesn't matter because these types of big cultural operations are going to be persuasive whether or not someone says, hey, that was fake. It's not going to change the effectiveness of it because a lot of people are going to say, I think we got attacked. I think it was Arabs. Well, the Arabs they did not attack us, and they did not kill Americans on September 11th, 2001, and they did not sacrifice themselves either. Arabs were not killing us on September 11th, 2001, and people were not dying on September 11th, 2001. But there was a big dust cloud, and people walked through it. People were in the vicinity of it. They made a cordon around the place where the airplanes were going to strike. Now people are familiar with drones striking targets with precisions, and a 737 can be made into a remote-controlled drone just as easily as any other aircraft with great flight characteristics for very precise control for the remote control operation. So I'm convinced it was not a lethal terrorist attack. It was not a terrorist attack at all. But the Arabs said one thing: you can blame it on us. So you can get those cocky Americans here where they will be a minority and they will be among a majority of Muslims. And the cocky and the Americans are cocky and the Americans are guilty of various historical atrocities, and we're going to let them experience some of our Islamic attitudes. And one of the keys to understanding that it was not a real terrorist attack is you have to understand Arab culture. Arabs love the story of Abraham Lincoln abolishing slavery. Arabs are Caucasians, and Caucasians like that story of Abraham Lincoln abolishing the alleged racial slavery of Africans in America. So I said I would go to Egypt and I would lecture. I would do some lectures to Arab audiences, and I would wish for or request an audience from the Muslim Brotherhood of Egypt, and I would lecture that. I would lecture them and the public also at Cairo University, and I believe a lot of them speak English. They also speak Arabic. I would go there and lecture them in English, and I would tell them, as a matter of fact, there was no racial slavery of Africans. It's always male gender slavery, and gender is the criteria of slavery, and race has never been the criteria of slavery. And I consider myself the number one sociologist, and this is one of my proofs that September 11th, 2001, those were fake terrorist attacks, fake terrorism, non-lethal, and they were planned to be non-lethal, and I think they were non-lethal. And then they made, using video editors to composite video of people in the windows of the skyscraper. I think so because Arabs love Abraham Lincoln, and New York City is the home of the New York Yankees, and the identity of the Yankees versus the Confederates. That would be like Arabs attacking their own favorite city. Arabs love New York City, and Arabs love the Yankee identity. Arabs are firmly aligned with the Yankee perspective in the fake Civil War in the USA. It was a fake Civil War. Abraham Lincoln found no racial slavery to abolish, and then Abraham Lincoln faked his own death. So Abraham Lincoln is actually he was actually a British operative, a sneak, and a scoundrel who fooled Americans with fake history. So there was no racial slavery to abolish, but if there had been, then Abraham Lincoln would have been a very good person if he had actually been fighting such a terrible scourge as racial slavery. But there was no racial slavery. It's always male gender slavery, and it's affecting men and males of every race, and the male gender is the criteria of slavery, and race has never been the criteria of slavery. So that's a lecture I would like to give to Muslim. I'm calling them culturally Muslim because a lot of these people who are described as Muslim are culturally Islamic in the sense that they embrace the culture of Islam while they believe science. And that is like an American who embraces the culture of Christianity while he believes in science and doesn't literally believe in the mythology in the Old Testament. He doesn't believe in the creation mythology. Most of the Arabs also do not believe in creation mythology. And that goes for the majority of culturally Muslim people. They're culturally aligned with Islam as their identity, but they are not religious, usually not religiously believing in the mythology of creation and the story of Adam and Eve and the story of Noah and the ark and the great flood. They don't usually they do not believe these things. So I would go to these Islamic countries and offer my historical lectures to help them reconsider their attitudes about American history. I'm not a Confederate, and I don't take the Confederate attitude because I'm not a rebel against the USA government. But when the USA government becomes too intolerable, I am looking to go to the European Union for asylum. And I'm actually looking forward to another trip to China. So anyway, they drove me crazy in New York City. I was using too much. I wasn't supposed to be sniffing cocaine. I didn't know. I listened to Frank Sinatra, and he made it sound like fun. It is fun, but you know what? Don't snort cocaine. There's a reason why you shouldn't. If you're going to use cocaine, you have to smoke it as the what they call crack rocks, because if you snort cocaine, it's a local anesthetic, and it's also a rather strong, what is it they call it? I don't want to say astringent, but let's say it's a alkaloid with maybe it has a negative pH. It's caustic. That's the word. So if you could feel it, you would feel a terrible burning sensation in your nose. So it's a terrible idea to snort cocaine. And then it's also a bad idea to snort crushed crystal amphetamine. These are caustic. They're burning the tissues and killing the tissue inside your nasal passage. And with cocaine, you can't feel it because cocaine is also a local anesthetic. That's what cocaine is good for, is to use for a surgeon to use it for oral surgery to inject the local anesthetic. So then you don't feel the caustic burning that's killing the nasal membrane inside your nasal passages. You don't feel the damage because the cocaine is a local anesthetic. So never sniff cocaine. I wasn't supposed to be sniffing cocaine. I got fooled by this Frank Sinatra. He said if he takes one sniff, it would bore him terrifically. And I thought of that, terrific. And it can give you a terrific sensation, but it wasn't my favorite. I always felt like it was causing too much hypertension. And I didn't sniff a whole lot of it, but if you consider the fact that it's a caustic chemical that you don't want in your nasal tissue, then even a little is a bad idea. And if you're going to use cocaine, you have to smoke it. You must not snort it. And then I shouldn't have been using stimulants because I also was using prescription stimulants at work. So I depleted my neurotransmitters using the prescription stimulants off the script, off of the prescription, using more of it than the prescription recommended, because I wasn't as talented as I thought I was. I was not as knowledgeable as I thought I was, and I wasn't learning as fast as I expected to be learning on my computer skills. So then I got into dementia. I was mentally demented, like usually seniors who are having advanced deterioration of their brain tissue are the ones who suffer age-related dementia. But in my case, it was the depleting of my neurotransmitters. It was drug-related dementia. So I was up there like in New York City, like it was as if I was dementia patient wandering around crapping diarrhea in my own trousers. That's how it was. More embarrassing than that. To walk out on the restaurant bills was more embarrassing. I would have been better off if I had been crapping diarrhea in my trousers while riding the train over the bridge and through the tunnels in New York City. It was terrible. I really made a mistake. But I can't regret it because maybe some good things happened while I was in New York. I just have to fess up and say it was really terribly embarrassing. But I was not looking to fight that young man. I was I thought, well, the food's already in my belly. I guess I should have thought I should stay and wait for the police. I would have been better off if I had stayed with him and waited for the police to take me to the mental facility. He was right. I was wrong. And I guess I got into more embarrassment on account of the fact that I ran away from him. But just to be clear, they portrayed me as if I was some kind of an Al-Qaeda operative. No, that was not what I was doing. I was suffering dementia. I was not. It was them who were projecting it was New York city officials and federal officials who were projecting the idea that I was acting with like a religious motive, like I'm going to fight these Americans over my breakfast. That was not my plan, and I was not getting ready to fight. As a matter of fact, I was just I was wondering why he wouldn't recognize that the food was gone. It's in my belly, and he couldn't get it back. I guess that was I should have kept my back turned sideways. I shouldn't have faced him face to face because that looked confrontational. But I was not about to fight him. I can tell you that. I'm not that type of a bad guy. Even in a demented state, I wasn't that bad. I was not about to fight him, not at all. And that's some of that is propaganda from the men who are jealous of me, the old codgers. I don't want to call them old and make it an age-related issue, but they're jealous of me. So anyway, the Muslims are not proud of my behavior walking out on restaurant bills. They are not saying, yeah, that's Al Qaeda. That's what we want Al Qaeda sympathizers to do, is to go eat breakfast and then offer to fight the helpers that served you. No, that's not what Al Qaeda is about. Al Qaeda is sympathetic with the Yankees and Abraham Lincoln. Al Qaeda pretends to be the bad guy because they want to scare Americans they think are sympathetic with the idea of racial slavery, the people on the wrong side of history, so to speak. And that's what Al Qaeda is with the Yankees, not against the Yankees. All right, that's enough for this video.